Now let's learn a Sicha of the Rebbe. We're actually continuing in the Sicha. The Sicha is from Parshas Vayetze, Tav Shin Nun Beis. Tav Shin Nun Beis. This is just a few months before the Rebbe had his stroke. So the Rebbe is talking about, this is from Tes Kislev, which is the birthday and also the day of passing away of the second Rebbe of Chabad, the Mittler Rebbe. And the Rebbe is discussing this. What is exactly time, and why is it so significant and important that the tzaddikim, like the second Rebbe of Chabad, the Mittler Rebbe, why it's so significant that the date of his birth and the day of his passing is the same date. And we see this by others. We see it by Moshe Rabbeinu, and there's also a midrash that says that all the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that they were born in Nisan and they passed away in the month of Nisan. So there's something special about this. So the Rebbe said, I'm just refreshing from yesterday. The Rebbe said, okay, let's look at this week's Torah portion. There's always a message in the Torah portion about life, especially life this week that the Torah portion occurs. It says we see a very, very interesting thing, that Yaakov, he was born last week's Torah portion, and this week's Torah portion, it talks about the main part of his life, his accomplishments in any case, is the birth of all of his children. It was in the worst place in the world, in Haran, terrible place, where everyone was they were all evil, and they were trickers and the deceptive people and liars and cheaters, awful people. And that's where Yaakov went in order to bring up his family and get married. And then afterwards he meets up with Esav. That's going to be next week's Torah portion. So these things aren't really fitting for Yaakov. He was supposed to be a big tzaddik. We can understand maybe there was one little period of his life. But the main thing is Yaakov, he was one of the fathers of Judaism. He has to spread out this Judaism everywhere. And no, we see that he was, in the most terrible place, bringing up his children. He had to worry about their education. They said, why? He says, because that's the whole idea of Yaakov and the Jewish people now, is to bring the highest levels of godliness into the lowest levels. That's what it says about that he went to Haranah. He put the letter Hey into Haran. That's what he said here. And even more, Haran means a low place. Haranah means even lower than the lowest. So that was the idea of Yaakov, was revealing, and the tzaddikim in all the generations, to reveal godliness in the lowest places. We talked about that yesterday. Okay, we see something also, another thing that's interesting. The Rebbe still has not really answered his question that we had before about what's the significance of the second Rebbe passing away on the same date that he was born. It says an interesting thing, that Yaakov, right in the beginning of this week's Torah portion, it says that Yaakov came to this place and ended up, this is the place of the Holy Temple, was going to be. And he put these rocks under his head. Remember, that's what we learned in the morning. The Yolan Sham, and he went to sleep there because the sun set. The Yolan Sham. And it means he spent the night there. Yolan means he spent the night. So it says he took from the stones, put them under his head, and he became one stone, like we learned in the Maimer and Likut in Torah Or. And he went to sleep in this place. He lay down to sleep. And then he had a dream, and there was a ladder, and the angels, and God talked to him and said, I'm going to be with you. But there's a question we can ask. Just one second. Before we get to what the dream was and that God appeared to him, it says, Kasher nishmato shel Yehudi, when the soul of a Jew, Yored Lamata, comes below to be clothed in the body, but Olam Hazeh, in this physical world, Olam comes from the language of Helam. Miyad, immediately, yesh kibo shemesh, the sun sinks, the sun goes down. Helam al gila, there's a concealment of the revelation of shemesh umagin avay Elokim. It says that God is like the sun and the sheath of the sun. S-U-N. The soul comes into the body, that's like Yaakov. Remember the Yud coming into the Akev, and it says immediately the sun sets. From this, he goes to sleep. What does it mean? This whole idea of going to sleep is, Yishkav means he lays down. What does it mean, lays down? Sherosha Adam, at the head of a person, the highest level, Mishtaveh becomes equal to the foot. Mata shelo, the lowest level becomes equal to the highest level. That's when you go to sleep. Right? Very few people go to sleep sitting down, standing up. Like later on in Sif Zion. Al Yedei Helam ve'Hester shel Olam Hazeh, by means of the concealment of this world, the lowest worlds, she'ein tachton lamata mimenu, there's nothing below it as far as concealing God and the darkness which is doubled and redoubled in this world. And especially the darkness of the night of Gullus. Of this exile. Like we see Oteotenu lo re'inu, we don't see any sign that there is such a thing as God. Ubemiyuchad, and especially be'ikvad the Mashiach, especially in the heels of the Mashiach, kasher mitzuyin b'matzav shel shina, when everyone is asleep and everybody is, how do you say, laying down. The head and the feet are the same. People don't use their heads properly. When these revealed powers are found concealed. So therefore, the head and the feet are equal. Very big thing nowadays. That what people go according to their feelings, what they feel. What they feel. I mean, it's reached now the exile has reached such incredible proportions, the confusion and the darkness, and that thing that was always very clear, what is a male and what is a female. So now there's what's called the World Health Organization, and this is like the ultimate in scientific fact, and they say that male and female goes according to your feelings. You can't have bigger darkness than that. There can't be any more darkness than that. Feelings are of utmost importance. What you feel. Don't use your head. What you feel. That's what it means. The head and the feet are on the same level, right? Your feelings are as important as your thoughts. Feelings are as important as facts. In fact, the feelings, those are the facts. That's what's called darkness, double darkness, and everything becomes like laying down. Even more, that this world is filled with all sorts of shells and opposition to God, that they oppose Hashem, Moridim, they rebel. Shalochi, and therefore there has to be, therefore it says that Yaakov had to take from the stones of the place. Why? Because he was afraid of the Chayot Ra'ot. He said he put these stones around it. That's what it says in the beginning, that he took stones and put them around his head because he was afraid of the wild animals. And there's a beautiful Sicha from the Rebbe I was thinking about learning, but we're learning this instead. That why did he took stones and put them only around his head? Right? If he was afraid of the animals, he should have put them all around his body. If he trusted in God, so don't put them around your head either. So the Rebbe finally says, a Jew has to watch his head. A Jew has to watch what he's thinking about, what his values are, what his thoughts are. Where his thoughts bring him. His values, his principles. And how do you protect it? He says with rocks, with total devotion, unquestioning devotion to the truth, to Hashem. no matter what it might cost you. What is true is the most important. That, with putting rocks around your head. But in any case, that's not the point the Rebbe wants to bring out. The Rebbe wants to bring out that the point is that this world is a very dangerous place, and therefore he had to put rocks around his head. But Davkal Yerida, only by means of this descent into the world, Nifal is brought about, Giloy, Giloy, a revelation, these Gabrus Aruchnis. We have to remember that God is one. There's not just the world and God. All there really is Hashem, and Hashem wants that fact to be revealed in the world. That's why he made a world, and that's why he put us here. Shagam, Matzav Yerud, Shal Yolin, even when a Jew is in such a low state that the sun went down and the soul has come into the body and he's laid down to sleep, Shirosho Bishtava in your head is equal to the body. Nevertheless, he draws down holiness of the soul even into his body. The soul becomes dominant on the body. In other words, your body does what your soul says to do, what you know is really valuable. But Ojoter, and even more, so that it lays down in a good way. What does it mean laying down in a good way? That the physical body becomes so united with the soul that by means of that, it brings about a completion in the soul. And we're going to learn how this happens. We can understand, how can the body be higher than the soul? How can this be? He says, I'm going to explain. This is something that a lot of the commentators ask on the Torah. Al-Mashem is super b'pasuk. What it says in the sentence, Vayiv Gabamakom, that he met up to this place and he went down, he slept. Yaakov went to sleep. He laid down and he went to sleep. No, that's what it says in the Bible. What's so problematic about that? Says the Rebbe, there's a big problem. Ketzad matim, how is it possible? Shadavka b'makam ahu. How is it possible that in that place, Yaakov, he went to what was this place? The place was the place of the Holy Temple. This is the place where the Akedah was. That Yaakov went to sleep? Lishon? You're going into the Holy Temple. It's like, who would do a thing like that? It's like going into the Rebbe's, you get an appointment with Lubavitcher Rebbe's office. You ask the Rebbe, excuse me, can I sit down for a second? You go to sleep in a corner. It's ridiculous, right? Yaakov made such an effort to do what God says. He finally gets to a place, it's the revelation of God, and he goes to sleep. How could he lay down and go to sleep in such a place? Even though that it says, yes, the sun suddenly went down, the sun went down suddenly in the middle of the day in order that he would lay down there. In other words, God made it, how do you say, user-friendly. He encouraged him to Hari Omer Chazal, the rabbis say, Vayishka b'makamohu atzmam kan shachav avol kol yud shana shaya tamun bebeit aver lo shachav. It says here he went to sleep, but all of the 14 years that he was in the house of Shem ve'aver, when he was learning Torah, he didn't lay down to sleep. He kept awake for 14 years to learn Torah, and suddenly he gets to this place, he gets to the Holy Temple, he goes to sleep. Says the 20 years that he was in the house of Lavan, also later on, the 20 years that he was in the house of Lavan, he also didn't sleep. So when he was learning Torah for 12, we just took a little break between learning Torah for 14 years, he didn't sleep, and 20 years when he's working for Lavan, he didn't really sleep. He nodded off a little bit, right? He didn't sleep. And Davka specifically, when he came to the place of the Holy Temple, this place he goes to sleep. How could it possibly be? And a lot of commentators ask this question. They give their various answers. Mizeh Gufa, from this it's understood, that this laying down must be a very high thing. Adarab, exactly the opposite. Inyan hachinaila. It must be a very, very high thing. Holy temple. For some reason, the most fitting way to act in the holy temple is to go to sleep. What does that mean? We'll see. Inyan zeh mitgala. This is revealed only in the holy temple. Laying down and going to sleep. That is proper etiquette. Huh? Yesh Lomar Woyo can explain why in the world would laying down in the place of the holy temple and going to sleep, that is the proper thing. That's what's called for. Why? I have the Bagashmias, Bein Amida Leshiva, the difference between standing up and sitting down and laying down is Be'et Amida, when a person is standing up, Afilu Yeshiva, even when he is sitting down, Nikar Begila, you can see clearly Achiluk, the difference between Chelak Elyon, the head, and his trunk, his body, Shala Adam, Lechelko Atakton to the bottom. Shazeu Elyon, Shamani get the Takton. We can see that his head and his heart is leading the person. When a person is sleeping, when a person lays down, his head and his body are on the same plane. They're equal. Can't tell the difference. Spiritually, upper part of a person, this indicates tochno umahuta or ruchnim. Namely the spiritual part of man. That is symbolized by the head. The lowest part of a person, mainly is his soul. The lower part of the soul, is his gashmiuto, his physicality. The higher part of the person, that's the person's values, his conscience, his goals, his ideas, his humanness is in the head. The lower part of his body, that's his animalness, is even more. I mean, it's like a rock. It's the lowest part of him. No comparison, right, between the feet of a person and the head of a person as far as this goes, spirituality, humanness goes. Moving for this understood. I mean, there's not much difference between the foot of a person and the foot of a cow. Right? What's the difference between them? Okay, it looks different. It looks different. Good. So the foot of a cow is different from the foot of a camel. It's also different. But there's no really essential difference between the feet and the legs of an animal and the feet and the legs of a human being. What's the difference? The big difference is between the head. Oh, the thoughts. Is there moving from the heart, the emotions. Animals also have emotions, but humans can have emotions according to, especially loving God, loving. Even though a person can love music, we learned in Kundra Samayan. By the way, anybody who wants to join us, 10 o'clock every Sunday night, I learned Kundra Samayan with someone in Germany. Even though Pashtus, Inyan Shchiva, this whole idea of laying down, Kishamayla Ruchnis, in other words, what does it mean? Laying down means that all of your good spiritual qualities are equal to the physical. The head and the foot are on the same level. Who you read a Gadol, this is a tremendous descent. Like, God forbid, a person dies. What does he do when he dies? He lays down. The person lays down, is dead. It's like a log. A log also lays down. Laying down in the most holy of holy places. Why do a thing like that? Nevertheless, this whole idea of the head being equal to the feet, in the essence of spirituality, there's got a really good thing to it. A mila, the highest level, becomes equal to the lowest level. Okay, you have to be careful here. We're not saying you should become animals. Listen. When there is the revelation of God's essence. Because God is above any sort of differences of high and low, like King David said, Ani behemos, ani ba'ar v'lo yida, I'm like a wild animal, behemos I'm like an animal with you. In other words, King David was saying that a cat and me have the same comprehension of what God is. I can understand all these different levels of God, and I'm a tremendously spiritual person. King David says, but really comprehending what the essence of God is, me and a cat are the same. There's no difference whatsoever. I can understand all these things in the middle, but what it is, who knows? Al derech yadua, like it's known, shapshitos shel ish pashut, that the simplicity of a simple person, that by him, he doesn't have much IQ. This is in some ways connected to the essence. The simple faith of simple people is something that's really to be envied. The simple people, they really are connected to God. A lot of people can make a big mistake out of this and think that only simpletons are connected to God, but people who have good intellect, right, they're not dependent on such, simplistic explanations. The moon is made of green cheese, so a person that doesn't really understand anything about the world, so he says, okay, there's God and I believe in God. You have to do it. They can't do anything. There are people that are incompetent people, or they're old or something, so they can't do. So they say God will do everything, but that's just escape from reality. Well, that's not the fact. The fact of the matter is that God really does exist. It really does exist, and these people are right. Yes, you should definitely do things, and you shouldn't completely depend on God for everything. You have to work in the world, and God got very angry at the spies in the desert, the whole generation. They didn't want to go into the land of Israel. He wanted them to go in and to work and to this. You have to work. But on the other hand, an awareness of the Creator is something which is above understanding. And these simple people, sometimes simple people have a much greater connection to the truth than complicated people do. Exactly the opposite. Complicated people, they deify intellect. They believe in God very much. They just think that they're God. A simple person, he realizes that, God is creating me. I just don't understand anything. And an intellectual person can think he understands everything. But Dover Zeh, this is drawn afterwards when a person when a person wakes up from sleeping. Mimakom shemurgashim hagdarim v'chilukim shebein ma'al lamata. That suddenly you feel that there is a difference between up and down, nimshach, that it comes with mitgale atzmuso, God's essence. In other words, when a person is laying down, that's one of the advantages. Another advantage of going to sleep. You go to sleep is everything is equal. The head is equal to the feet. Then you wake up in the morning, you realize, the head is higher than the feet. But don't forget where you came from. You came from a state where it was nothing. I mean, before you were born, what was there before you were born? You understood something. You were you had your name on the door. You didn't have anything. Right? All of a sudden you're born. Now you have intellect. No, now you think that you're God. And the fact of the matter is, it's good that you have intellect, but just remember where it comes from. When a person, first of all, is laying down and then he wakes up, then there's expressed the difference between up and below. But it's only just a form. But the essence, he remembers the essence of his intelligence and his emotions really come from this unity where the head and the foot are equal. Zotamirat, and we're going just up to Chet. This means that the service of a Jew, when he goes out from Beersheba and he goes to Harana, when he goes from the holiness, when he goes from the upper worlds and his soul is brought into the world, there's two things. Number one, Nosef alis gabros shel giloy ruchnius al olam agashmim ba'ofen shegashmius eno ma'alima. And he has two types of service. One type of service is that, number one, he has to try to overpower the physicality and the false egotism of the world with spirituality, Elohi Kli, to make the world just a vessel for godliness, Shehi Gidre Metziuta, he Lamorot Akol Helen Vehester Alaruchnit, to realize that the world, as real as it seems, is really hiding over something much more meaningful and more meaningful and real. But we have to remember, where does this come from? The ability to do this, nif alit, it comes from hishtavut achdut ben gashmit ruchnit, to realize that really it's all one. Just like when you were asleep first, right? The soul, before it came into the body, everything was equal. So first of all, when the Jew comes into the world, as he has to realize that God is the main thing, and he has to be religious, and he has to be connected to Hashem, and that the world is just can be a big fake out, and it's covering over the truth, right? And make the spiritual the main thing, and the physical should just be a vessel to it. That's number one. Step number two is to realize the tremendous importance of the physical world, that God wants it to be here, and that unifies the physical with the spiritual. That really it's like it's like something like the state when you were laying down before the body came into the world, before the soul came into the world. Before the soul came into the world, everything was equal. It's like being asleep. Then the soul was put into the world. That's something like being awake. All of a sudden, everything is different. Right? A person wakes up, he's a big egotist. And then there's the third step, is to lay down again and realize, wow, the whole entire world is really just a creation. And so is the spiritual, just a creation. And God put me here that the lowest levels suddenly become very important. The head and the foot become equal. As we will talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. You're all invited to the 3:00 class. Hope to see you all. Have a good day, everyone. Mashiach now.